Hello there, Ray here, and I'm joined by Activation.
Hello.
And today, guys, we are going to show you a simple brown mushroom block farm as well as brown mushroom item farm, which allows you to AFK and get tons of mushroom blocks for versions 1.12. Now, mushroom blocks are one of those blocks that are kind of hard to get in large quantities in survival and are a unique block for a lot of different types of aesthetic builds. The way that this farm works is that there is a brown mushroom growing, there is a seedling down here, and once it grows up, it will grow in this area over here. Then it's being destroyed by a player using Silk Touch. And this is creating the brown mushroom blocks. Those are then being collected and stored in chests. Now, the original concept was by 1011, one of the project members, and I helped him kind of tweak it. And he said I can make a video about it, and Activation and me have been testing it, tweaking a little bit more, just getting it fine-tuned. And this is for version 1.12. This is because in future versions, the trick here, which we're using to actually prevent part of the mushroom from occupying this space when it grows, is broken in version 1.13 and above. And the way that this works is that when mushrooms generate into the world, they will not destroy leaves. So if ever we came across like a dark forest, you'll see that there'd be mushrooms growing and they might kind of intersect some tree, but they won't actually break the leaves and replace them with mushroom blocks. That's what we're using here. The leaves are preventing the mushroom block from being spawned in over here. And this allows us to have the mushroom grow, but we don't have to worry about trying to remove any blocks that would end up over here. And this is a good thing because it keeps the design fairly simple. Essentially, all the player is doing is moving back and forth and destroying every block that is in front of his face. And with a reach in survival, he's able to reach out 5 blocks in front of him. And by removing these 2 back blocks from the brown mushroom, he can reach all the blocks, and once destroyed, the mushroom is able to grow again. Now, if any blocks are left behind in this layer or even up here, you'll see that the mushroom will not be able to grow. And this is because it's checking an area, so you can see now it's not growing. But if I remove that, it will go ahead and grow. There it goes. So you see it went ahead and grew. And that's why we have leaves up here as well as down below, and that is also why there is an air gap up here, because the game actually checks to make sure there's nothing up here besides like leaves. That's the only thing that could be up here. And this farm here we designed for 2 players, but we also got another design over here which can be done with 1 player. So if you're using the 2-player farm, it starts out with a player AFKing down here, and he's placing a mushroom on top of a puzzle block. Now, puzzle blocks have a unique property of being able to have mushrooms placed on top of them, even if there is sky access. And this is something that is unique to puzzle as well as mycelium. Notice if I try to place it like here on this iron block, or even if I had like grass blocks, I'm still not able to place mushrooms on top of them. But mycelium also has a special property, and this condition really only applies to the overworld where there is skylight. So if you were to do this in End Dimension or even in the Nether, you could place them directly onto something like grass blocks. So by doing this trick, the player is able to place a mushroom right there, and what we have is 2 dispensers on either side which are full of bone meal, and these will activate once the mushroom is cleared from above. So we have a little bit of circuitry which can tell when the mushroom is cleared, and that is this torch on either side. So if there is a block on either of these 2 ends, then we know that the mushroom is not completely cleared, and then we will prevent the dispensers down here from dispensing bone meal. The reason this is done is because the game will actually use up bone meal even if there is a mushroom occupying the space and a giant mushroom is unable to grow. The game really doesn't recognize that, and it will waste bone meal. So when the player has removed the block on either side of these torches, it will turn off these pistons because this torch is powering this block, which is powering this piston. And once the block is removed, the power is removed as well. And these just go over here to either side of these pistons, which are pushing down an observer. This is making an observer clock. So notice when one side is removed, one goes down. When the next side is removed, the other one goes down. And this will create a clock which will power the dispensers in the back. The number of bone meal it takes to get it to grow is a little more just because we are trying to restrict the growth. Essentially, the mushroom has a few different heights which it can grow, but only one of them will successfully be able to grow in this area, which is the height right here. And that's what we kind of limit it to. And we do this by having this glass ceiling here. It will always try to grow 1 block lower than the glass ceiling. This means when the game attempts to grow a mushroom, it'll go through a couple different sizes, and each time it fails, it won't grow a mushroom, but it will still use up bone meal until eventually it randomly chooses the right size. Now you notice that once it grows, We have this player down here, AFK, placing down a new mushroom, but he's also breaking the old stem as well. So he has both the right click as well as the left click button held down. This is something you could do while being AFK in survival. Also notice that where the stem would normally grow, we also have leave blocks here. That way we don't have to worry about trying to remove any of these blocks. Now the second player that's AFKing is in this little water stream here going back and forth. And this is also connected to these switches over here. And this just switches these dispensers which have water in a bucket. So once this mushroom is removed, then a new mushroom will come in, and this will allow a pulse to come over here and activate this dispenser. This will do the opposite on the opposite side. So when it inverted, this will power it and remove the water, and then water will be placed in on this side. If you don't want to use dispensers, you can also do the same type of system with pistons. This system makes it so we don't have to have the player in the same location each time a mushroom grows. He can be on either side and start from that side and work his way to the opposite side. The player is using an axe that has silk touch. The type of axe doesn't really matter. Even using like an iron axe will still instant mine the mushrooms, allowing you to move across the entire thing. But a diamond axe does have more durability. Now you can also put unbreaking on the axe as well as mending if you want to, and hook up an XP farm for this. Now we didn't hook up any type of XP farm, but we might do that in the future. I would recommend using like a pigman portal farm that has pigmen that would die near the player and give them XPs, similar to what Zurex did in his leaf tree farm. Otherwise, you could just have the player replace the axe, or you can swap it out with a new one and then repair them all at your XP farm later on. And this farm produces 16,600 mushroom blocks per hour. That is really amazing for such a simple setup. As the items break off and fall down, we got a row of hoppers which are picking them up. We also have hoppers underneath of the soul sand, and we have some hoppers at the end of these water streams. If you don't want the player to pick up any of the items, you can fill his inventory up with something else. That way he's unable to pick up any of the blocks, and they all get picked up by the system. The hoppers will pull all the items over here, and we have two outputs for the items to go into. As one hopper is not enough to keep up with the rates, so we actually have chests on either side which are collecting all the items. And thanks to Activation for helping me test this farm to get the rates, and also make sure that the players would be able to AFK it correctly. Now the two-player system, we need this player to also be giving a new mushroom seed each time, and that's what this dispenser does over here. So we have a little system that every time this gets activated, the player is given a new mushroom. You can see even when the player is on the opposite side, this will activate and he'll be given another mushroom. And then he'll use that mushroom to plant. Now the player here that's AFKing, planting as well as breaking, he's not aiming at the dirt block here or the mushroom. He's actually aiming at this obsidian. He's placing the mushroom up against it. That way when he gets done breaking the stem, he doesn't end up breaking the mushroom. He just sits there and tries to break the obsidian, which takes quite a while. When it comes to the one-player machine, this is the device over here. It's very similar to the other one, except instead of having the player plant in a mushroom, we use the mechanic of mushrooms being able to grow to other blocks. As long as the criteria where they're trying to go to is valid, then they will be able to grow to nearby blocks like this block right here. You also need to make sure there's not too many mushrooms around the area, otherwise they won't be able to continue to spread. So these mushrooms over time will just randomly grow over here, and once they grow there, the mushroom will grow up, and what we have is something very similar to the top with the player breaking them. Now, when the player up here, he can either choose to use like the axe to silk touch them, or he can use fortune, which will allow him to get more mushroom items per block, or he can just use his bare hand as well. Now, in order for the player to break all the mushrooms by hand, we have him in a water stream, but he's on top of soul sand, which slows him down quite a bit. We also have the haste 2 beacon in the area. This will give him a little boost in the speed in which he can break the mushrooms. So the player moves quite slow breaking the blocks, and instead of the stem that we had before being broken by the player that used to stand in here, we now take the stem and we push it all the way over into this corner over here, and you'll see the player is able to break the stem along with all the rest of them. Now when the next mushroom grows, or the next mushroom comes over here, you'll see the stem comes up and the player is able to break it again, plus he's able to break all the rest of them. And that's just because we have a little bit of delay here. So the player sits here for a little while, then the water starts pushing him, give enough time to break that new stem that comes up in front of his face. And the way the stem gets here is that right where the stem will grow, we have some pistons which will pull it out. Then we have pistons which will push it over, and then up, and then it goes all the way up here in the corner of the mushroom. So notice when the brown mushrooms grow, their corners are a little bit different shaped. There is a notch taken out of this and that is enough to push the mushroom up into it. But it's really up to you how you want to operate the system. You can choose to use a player or just have the mushrooms grow naturally. Naturally growing mushrooms take quite a while to grow, but when the dispensers are sitting here bone milling, they're not actually using up any bone meal, so you don't have to worry about that. But giant mushrooms do need to be bone meal. If you just leave a mushroom where it's at, it's not going to naturally grow, so you can't just sit there and wait for it to grow as well. It's different than like saplings. Other than that, this system is very much like the other one, where it is simple, just with some minor tweaks. But we do have 2 beacons over here to help the player. The haste beacon allows him to break a little bit faster, and we also have a regen beacon. This will allow it so that once the player has broken all the blocks, and if you are playing on hard mode, your hunger will eventually be used up just for breaking blocks, and then you'll start taking damage, and you'll eventually die if you don't have a regeneration beacon to heal you. So that's needed if you're playing on hard mode and running this farm while AFK. Now this design here only works for the brown mushroom, does not work for the red mushroom. That is because the red mushroom has a different shape and checks a different area when placing blocks in. Now in these versions you would have to craft your bone meal up from bones, unlike 1.13 where you can use like composters or even fish mob farms to get bone meal without having to craft it. So I recommend using this with like a skeleton spawner farm or just a skeleton farm or even a wither skeleton farm. That way you have some bones to use up to convert over into mushroom blocks. If you would like to build up either of these designs, I will provide the world download. And also Activation is going to do a tutorial on how to build these up on his own channel, which once he has that video out, I will link it down in the description. Hope you guys really enjoyed these simple farms for 1.12, and hopefully we'll come up with a version for 1.13 and above to do with the changes that they made. If you guys did enjoy, be sure to go ahead and leave a like as well as share with others.